Hello, everyone. Welcome to the All Systems Go session on key lessons learned when driving change management for digital transformations. In this panel, we are joined by digital transformation experts Paul Hutchison, Senior Vice President of Business Solutions at the Boeing Employees Credit Union, and Rami Thabit, Senior Vice President of Digital Sales and Advice at the Royal Bank of Canada, both of whom have had years of practical experience on designing and delivering on digital transformations. Paul, Rami, thank you both for joining us today. Let's perhaps start by defining digital transformation. What does it really mean? Paul, would you like to kick us off?
When I think about digital transformation, I kind of think about three pillars. The first pillar is, how do I deliver capabilities to my customer as quickly as possible on the channel that they want to consume it. The second thing I think about is how do you work in a transformative way? How do you rethink this silo-oriented technology development and move to a more customer-centric, design-oriented development? And then the last thing is really, how do you modularize your technical environment to give you freedom of action? And be able to meet the needs of the business in real time versus having to have long drawn out, long running waterfall projects to execute on initiatives.
Makes a lot of sense, Paul. Anything else to add, Rami?
Yeah, I think I'm going to add to Paul. It's a great answer. I look at it less from a technology perspective and more from a business perspective. The pandemic has been a tremendous accelerant at really fundamentally shaping and changing consumer buying behavior in ways we haven't seen yet before. And digital transformation is about meeting that newfound expectation that consumers have. They have fundamentally different expectations of how to buy, how to get services, and really getting your organization to meet those expectations in new ways. And what underpins that are new ways of working, new technology, new routines, new structures, and adapting your organization to meet that challenge in the most cost-effective manner. From my perspective, I start dropping out the word digital, and I actually talk about transformation. I talk about change management, organizational change. Probably overly simplistic. Nobody ever said bankers don't simplify. What's digital? It's ones and zeros. At the end of the day, COBOL was ones and zeros, Java was ones and zeros, mobiles ones and zeros. I'm oversimplifying. There's probably a number of senior technologists probably tearing their hair out as they hear this. But what underpins it for me is you're asking an organization to change. And they're changing because their customers have asked for change. And their customers are changing how they interact with you and their expectations of you. If they weren't asking for the change, why would you transform?
Just adding to what Rami just said, I couldn't agree more. When I look at what BECU is going through right now, it was stuck in a technical transformation for a while. And the realization is that if you're really going to meet the customer where they live, then you have to change the way you think about driving and running your business. And so this concept that digital transformation is somehow different than organizational transformation, I think that's where people get stuck. You have to change the way you work and the way you think about your customer, and for that matter, the way requirements come down through the organization for serving your customer, right? I'm not talking about technical requirements. I'm talking about just what are the services we want to offer and how do we measure ourselves? Do we measure ourselves against other banks? Or do we measure ourselves against best-in-class services? Because that's what's driving our customers. Our customers aren't saying, hey, I want you to be a better bank than this other bank. They're saying, hey, I like to consume the way Amazon lets me buy. I like to be able to have loyalty programs the way Delta or Marriott provided. A really seamless experience between individual servicing from customer rep at the counter or digitally, right? So I agree completely with what Rami's saying. It's an organizational change challenge more than it's a technical challenge.
That's great. Can you both give me some examples of digital products and transformation initiatives you have embarked on?
Sure, I'll get started. We have I'll use a particular example close to my heart. We launched a product called Nomi probably 3 years ago. It's a play on words. It's NOMI. It's an AI-based platform, and it's the play on words is Know Me. We know you, we help know you. And the platform was very much a digital insights, financial insights, budgeting, and auto savings capability all rolled into one, different modules. So the premise behind it was always going to have the client's interest at heart. We were never going to sell from it. Obviously, my sales and marketing partners were incredibly enthused by that idea to spend a bunch of money in the client's interest without selling a product. For us, what was important, reinforce trust, build a digital relationship. So we're used to being in human businesses and building human relationships. How do you get as close to a relationship with a consumer digitally? That became very important. How do you bind digital to a human experience? We're proud to say that we nudge clients to say, looks like you were double charged. Do you want to check on that? Hey, your subscription fee is about to renew. Do you really want to do this? Again, at the end of the day, we actually use the AI to say, you actually have $35 of cash flow in your account that you really don't need. Humans always overestimate or underestimate how much available cash they have, and that what they do, they spend it. So we tell them, do you want to store that away for a rainy day? And we do it automatically. And we help them budget. And all of that is in the best interest of the consumer. Sounds simple, but required a tremendous attitudinal shift in the organization. Just the attitudinal shift that we were going to give clients as much or more information than financial advisors. And that was a fundamental sea shift in strategy.
I love that example, Rami, and I especially like, and I'm going to paraphrase it and probably not paraphrase it well, but I like this concept of putting power in the hands of the consumer, giving them more information, more real-time information. I have a similar example. This was back in a previous role when I was in Australia. We set out to digitize financial instruments that were regulated, and the financial instruments themselves actually had value in the paper. And they were guaranteed letters of credit and bank credit loans. And in this digital transformation, the technical part was pretty cool. It was blockchain, AI, a lot of data, right? So really cool. And I could just go on for everybody because that's my jam. But to Rami's point, the hardest part was actually the people part. Getting everybody together to understand that you could do this in a different way and still provide great customer service. The banks didn't want to do it because they thought they would lose the relationship with, the person needing the bank guarantee, the customer, right? The property owner or the person who owned the big contract didn't want to do it because they felt like there might be, they needed to have that piece of paper. That's how the whole process. So it became a big process transformation, and it was on multiple layers. It was changing the way the banks thought, changing the way the person leasing the property or the person running the project and needing a guarantee against delivery, and the person receiving the guarantee thought, but then also changing the way the regulators thought. And the fact that if you digitize this instrument, it is safer. It is faster for the customer. It actually transforms for the customer. We actually took it from 3 to 6 weeks down to 30 minutes. And that was, everybody said, wow, that was incredible. But what was really incredible is after a year, the fraud that was reduced was significant. The loss was significant. And bank profitability, strangely enough, went up. And so even though, it was kind of a win-win-win, but it wasn't the technical challenge. It was literally the 6 to 8 months we did changing the way everybody worked and thought about work.
Transformation, digital transformation, I often say is is an exercise in organized chaos, and emphasize organized, because if it becomes disorganized chaos, it becomes very difficult. Often one of my colleagues jokes with me, calls me the Henry Kissinger of digital transformation, because I spend so much time on shuttle diplomacy. Lots of phone calls, lots of phones, lots of listening, lots more listening, lots of cajoling, convincing, etc. But it starts with a North Star. You do have to identify your so what, your big whys. What is your North Star? Where are you going as a business? And you do have to tackle the tough conversation. You do have to tackle the elephant in the room. The rhinoceros on the table, use whatever analogy you want. You got to put that on the table. And those are best not had in meeting rooms, I have found, or on PowerPoints. Those are best had in coffee chats and pints and glasses of wine, etc., because you're dealing with very human issues. You're dealing with power structures. You're dealing with ingrained silos. You're dealing with haves and have-nots. You're dealing with real human emotional issues. Once you unpack that and you got a pathway there and you got everybody on the bus, the proverbial on the bus, and some people have a seat right behind the bus driver, some are in the middle and some are on the back, but at least everybody's on the bus. Sometimes you got to strap a couple of people to the roof with my cord, but you got to get them on the bus. Once you do, Paul's point is right. The build becomes really easy. Technologists can do their magic. If you're asking your technology team to do their magic in the midst of an unaligned organization, you've set them up for failure. You've set them up really badly and quite poorly, and you have not done your job as the sponsoring executive or the one accountable for the transformation. So you're probably seeing a lot of passion come out in this answer because, after doing this for 29 years, I've done it the wrong way. I've done it the hard way. I've done it the easy way. And I think eventually I found doing it the most effective way, which is a combination of all three. I'd say I think I should buy my own pub at this point. It's probably cheaper, but it's a lot of working the phones. And frankly, after our session here, I got 3 or 4 phone calls to do on my drive home that are all a continuation of this in my current transformation.
Jazz, I think Rami captured really well the process of getting people aligned, and I couldn't agree more with the whole concept that there's a lot of shadow diplomacy and some straight up diplomacy and sometimes strapping people to the roof. I love that analogy. I'm going to use it, Rami, because I've got some people I need to strap to the roof right now. But what's really interesting is, how does transformation start? And it probably shouldn't start with technology. The idea could come from there, but it's really got to come from, how am I going to create value for my customer? Or how am I going to address a real business concern or a business need? Or how am I going to address a regulatory environment? Or how do I stay competitive? Or, oh my gosh, there's a pandemic and my customers all want to be served a really different way and I'm not ready. So how fast? And I think for digital transformation slash agile ways of working, the pandemic had a silver lining. And that silver lining is we've learned that the pace of change historically was not fast enough. And this whole concept of transformation and new ways of working and self-directed pods and all these catchphrases that you hear, it all really comes down to, how do you align your technology, your process and design people, and the business to a North Star, and you use that exact word, Rami, and keep them all aligned to that. And don't think, tech can shove transformation down the business's throat. And don't think the business can wish for transformation and tech will deliver it. Wish is not a strategy. Hope is not a strategy, right? And it really is a lot of hard work, and it's a lot of hard people work.
I'm going to add to Paul's, because this is a really important question, and specifically reflecting, Gaz, on your organization and the great work you guys are doing, and just the tremendous growth and support of the audience that you have around the table. Um, Courage. You need to have an individual with the courage to stand in front of the room and say, our vision is X. Doesn't mean they're George Patton, saying it's my way or the highway, but somebody's got to kind of lead the way, bring their colleagues along. Probably the biggest, area is a leader who will, say in 5 years or in 3 years or in 2 years, we're going to be here. How they need to get all of our colleagues on with them, contributing to that pathway. And if they become sort of the ones who clear the roadblocks, not do the work. Sometimes executive leaders confuse their role. They confuse their role for, I'm going to be the person who opines on everywhere on that PowerPoint, and it's going to be the most beautiful strategy. Your job is clear the runway, create that compelling vision, and then create the environment for all of your colleagues to do and to bring their best. If you've brought out the best in them, you've succeeded as a transformational executive. So I think you got us on that thread, Paul, and I think it's incredibly important for your user population there, Jazz, and there. I think this is part of the work that you guys do. You're bringing a tremendous amount of value, but it needs some real thought leadership to really help accelerate where people can get to.
Yeah, probably just driving that stake further into the ground. This concept of courage in the face of change, in the face of adversity. Um, she's a motivational speaker. She's written a couple books, and she's also a pretty famous HR advisor, Cy Wakeman. Cy has this general point of view, and that is, you should always imagine what great looks like, and then do that, right? Um, you know, this is not hers, but she says that all the time as well. Always do the right thing, because the alternative, by definition, is the wrong thing. And then, last but not least, stay in joy or leave in peace, because we are transforming. The ship is leaving the docks. For those of you who think there is a third option, you're sadly mistaken. You can leave in peace or stay in joy. But thinking you can wait this thing out and it'll fail and then I can go back to the way I used to do it, that is the recipe for failure for the organization. And then as technologists, where I consider myself, our job is to feed that beast and make sure we deliver on the technology, that we keep the as-is state safe while the business transform and the rest of technology moves it forward. And I think about what you guys, the service you provide, around systems monitoring and the activities that you do for your customers. It's a critical part of this transformation, because if you can't have a really safe and sound and secure foundation, you can't get to the future. Traveling in a known direction at a known speed from an unknown position is simply getting you to another unknown position. Knowing where you are, knowing where you're going, and then lining the attitude up, the technology will follow.
Yes, we're going to ruin your agenda, but I'm going to riff off of that, because I think, as much as we've said, like, you start with a strategy, a North Star, you drive that technology. I've also, very emphatically, my organization have definitely espoused the view that technology can be one of the greatest strategic assets a business person has to shape the landscape in a meaningful way. And I personally have used technology, and I always say technology is my secret weapon about how to change policy in a regulated environment. We are highly regulated, as Paul mentioned, in the banking sector, but we also shape the landscape. We shape the strategic landscape through the strategic use of technology and assets. And we get into certain technologies where we ask for exclusivity. Our size allows us to do so. We create strategic partnerships that nobody else can get into. very much that becomes part of the business imperative. That becomes the business strategy. And so I want to also reinforce that it is a two-way path here. It's not a one directional path. And it is incumbent on business and transformation leaders to become technology, not literate, not technology competent, but technology expert. The hands are not on the keyboard, thank God for that. But they need to be able to understand how to strategically use it. If it's still, oh, the technology team is going to get it done, wrong place to be. And I would just want to re-emphasize that because I think your company and your users can actually bring a tremendous amount of value and the capability to bring where it's a strategic asset to the business, not a service delivery as part of a transformation generically.
That's a great point, Rami, where technology is a strategic asset to make transformations, not just generic activities. I have to keep that in mind. So any additional pointers on key success factors for transformations?
Maybe I'll add a couple more. Resilience. Invest a lot in emotional and physical and spiritual and any kind of resilience you can get without getting new age on your group here. Resilience is important. You got to be able to come back every day. You're going to have the door slammed in your face, and you just got to keep coming back at it if you believe in it hard enough. Tenacity and diplomacy and tactfulness. You do need to know how to navigate the environment, and when the front door isn't open, you got to find the back door, the windows. Heck, I've climbed through chimneys to get transformations done. But there is a right time and there is a right way. Believe it or not, there is a right way and there is a wrong way, and there is a wrong way that will hurt transformation. You may get the initiative done, but you can do irreversible damage. I've seen organizations actually harbor the attitude, oh, transformations don't work here. That's just think about the legacy you're leaving behind, but not dwell on the negative. Those would be kind of the two winning pieces. Always know who your coalition of the willing is. You're going to need them. You're going to rely on them. Make a lot of friends. That doesn't mean be a pushover or rollover, but make a lot of friends. My bar tab is probably more expensive than the transformation cost. Probably money well spent. All kidding aside, though, make a lot of friends. You're going to need them. And finally, have that one person who you can invite into your office and just download on and say, I need a bit of advice. Sometimes you don't need the advice. You just need to unload after a long couple of weeks, and you need somebody who just, hears you out. And one last piece, know who your cheer squad is. All of us need the cheer squad. We're human. We need to be told we did a good job, no matter how senior you are. And, praise at a senior level becomes very scarce. As you know, Jasmine, nobody really tells you at a senior level, hey, great job. That was awesome. It comes far and few in between. And so take the wins when you can get them. But make sure you have the people that say, you know what, that was solid.
And I also think, Rami, you brought up a good point in the previous section that I think goes to trust. And that is, do you have people as a leader, as a senior leader in an organization that will cheer you on? And they are few and far between. The other group that's few and far between are those that will actually say, I disagree. The more senior you get, the more likely you are to have a lot of yes people around you, even if that's not what you want. And for me personally, I go out of my way to demonstrate that I am trustworthy by saying, this is a cone of silence. You don't have to believe me, but I need your perspective. I need you to show me where my blind spots are. We need to have a discussion. Now, let's be completely and totally honest with one another. We will discuss this. We'll find, hopefully, the best joint path. But eventually, a decision is going to have to be made, because you said it, Rami. We've all got bosses, and we've got to move forward. And so we'll make a decision. If we're wrong, we'll adjust. Right? But my expectation is after we have this conversation, that we're on the train together, right? And we will get to the next station, and we can change trains if we need to. but we're going to go and we're going to give whatever we decide a try, and an honest try, not the okay, I'm just going to wait till the next stop and then I'll say I told you so. An honest try. And so I think this whole concept of trust as a foundation, and enough trust that you can get conflict, right? Not unhealthy conflict, but that conflict that kind of helps you sort through problems that aren't evident, your blind spots, etc. And then I also think trust comes from holding people to outcomes. Too often in transformation, milestones are celebrated in absence of outcomes. And that's part of the reason why I love agile and sprints and all of the the ceremonies that are associated with it, because they are outcome-based ceremonies. They're not, I got to a point in time and woohoo, the triangle on the project plan is met, we're going to move on to the next thing. It's actual business impact. Did we accomplish what we were setting out to do? And that also takes trust. And so almost every activity you take on, and I won't lie, I've also spent a lot of time in bars over wine. I've not moved to the shooters, Rami, because I'm a lightweight, but maybe there's a couple people that I need to do that with. But definitely, the beverage of your choice and a good meal. I think a lot gets accomplished when you break bread.
I'm gonna add three things to Paul got us on a really good thread. In transformations, I go out of my way to almost engineer either a very bold reach, small but bold, where it may falter. I think it's very important to send a message that, okay, you made a mistake, we cleaned it up. Often I see organizations like mistakes are cataclysmic. Like, oh my God, we made a mistake. Great, welcome to being human. Okay, we didn't catch you up and eat you. We didn't run you up the flagpole and tar and feather you. Move on. It's not whether you make mistakes, how you react to it organizationally and how fast you pivot and change. Even that lesson is incredibly, incredibly important for an organization. Second, I love the outcomes. I just spent for a senior leader to spend 2 hours on OKRs. I spent 2 hours on OKRs, outcomes and key results today. I'm reviewing our OKRs for the quarter. We spent 2 solid hours with my team just nitpicking the OKRs. I have not looked at a project plan. If I got the right OKRs, I've nailed it. We've nailed it as a team. So we spend an inordinate time in that. And I would say the last piece, you nailed it. You got to be honest. I just sat down with a colleague, said, look, post-pandemic, we're only coming back into physical environments in a meaningful way. The next 3 to 4 years, you're going to see a 30%, 40% shift in volume. Think about what I was just telling. I was telling a colleague, a peer, a senior executive who's been doing this for 25 to 29, 30 years, that 30% of his 40% of what he currently does today is gonna move, whether he likes it or not. We can do it. How are we going to do this together? At the end of the day, we're both shareholders. We're both officers of the organization. We report to the same CEO, and we have shareholder accountability. He's not losing in that scenario. It all depends on how you have the conversation. So I think, Paul, you're absolutely right. You gotta have that, because whether you may not be their cup of tea, but they're always going to say, I can count on the truth and I trust that individual. And when they get to that, you've got the open door to transformation. Before that, you're fighting an uphill battle.
That is so perfect, Rami. Do not mistake like for trust. Do not mistake, an accountable high-performance organization as mean, right? Those things are not the same thing, and so accountability requires trust. It also requires honesty. Right? It also requires goal setting that is clear and a reach. And I really love that. I use it all the time, Rami. Orchestrate a failure that you can publicly own.
Yep.
Right? Never let a crisis go to waste. If you have a chance to stand in front of it and own something, that is a failure, and show that it's okay. Hey, I didn't burst into flames.
That's a great point, Paul. Now, speaking of reach, we have reached the end of our session today. Thank you, Paul and Rami, for sharing your tremendously practical advice on change management when it comes to digital transformations. With that, I'd like to thank you all for joining us today. Hope you enjoy the rest of our conference. Bye for now.
Bye.